Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. This session is about social media and unusual spellings. I hope by the end of this session you would have an idea of the global trends that are changing with regard to spellings and the impact of social media on them. Well, my dear students, I hope and expect that you already understand that the relationship of language, society, and media operates as a triangle. Each of these affects the other two, and in return is affected or influenced by the other two. So, when we look at the impact of social media, on the language choices that are made in the society, in this highly technological age of computers and of social media, I think spellings of any language, and especially of English language, because that is one of the major languages that is used on social media. Change in spellings is one of the significant areas that can be of concern for the sociolinguists. Well, if we look at the general trends of the use of spellings on social media, it seems as if spellings are almost going extinct. There are certain questions that arise: how far and how much we are affected by social media in this particular context. Think of your daily routine, think of your use of social media, think of how much time do you spend on, different kinds of activities, for example, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, on different websites, how many times and how frequently, do SMSs, and when, in the context of different countries, for example, when we think of Pakistan, the SMS bundles that are offered by different telecommunication countries, how they encourage the use of SMSs, and thus this process of social networking via this virtual media, how, frequently you become an active member in that, is a food for thought for us as sociolinguists. How much time we spend on the media, what kind of activities we are involved in. If we think of those activities, these activities are most of the times either in the pictorial form, where, pictures are sent and received, but most of the times they are in the written form. Even if pictures are, involved, commenting on the pictures, labeling the pictures, etc. involves certain written forms. Now, this leads us to the crucial question: what kind of writing is used on social media? What kind of writing we come across? Well, with autocorrect, Twitter, and text lingo, it appears that people are becoming progressively more concerned about their ability to spell. They are least concerned with the standardizing processes of spellings. And, if you compare your today's experiences as members of the global community, for example, of using English, I hope you would agree that when you were very young, when you were in your early first 10 years of your life, probably those were the times when there was more focus both of the schools and of the home, that is of the family, the parents, on teaching correct spellings to children. And incorrect spelling was kind of considered to be a taboo, and it was disliked and it was disapproved of. It was considered to be, a sign of dumbness, or a sign of, lack of interest in academics, etc. by the students. At least in the Pakistani context, this is how it was interpreted in most of the cases. However, with the emergence of social media, there is a lot of change. There's a tremendous shift in attitude and in perspective towards spellings. Now we need to consider what are the kind of practices that people, especially youth, are involved in. All across the globe, as people type at speed online, there is now a general attitude that there is no need to correct the spellings. Either they would be auto-corrected through different, technologies, and if they are not auto-corrected, the users would let them go as incorrect. This is considered to be a part of the virtual linguistic practices in the global community. Now what we need to think about is children who are brought up in the internet world, what about their attitude towards spellings, because they do not question this idea of correction of spellings. What are the different reasons of these spelling changes? There are multiple reasons. The reasons involve, for example, one, that is the authority and the check. The openness and, the unchecked, interactive action possibilities of social media, they put a bar on the processes of standardized spellings being used, because there is no check, so people do not really care about them. Apart from that on the global level, when we look at the spelling issues, for example, this British and the American varieties of spellings, when we look at them, there are huge differences. For example, C-E-N-T-R-E or C-E-N-T-E-R, two different varieties of spelling that are used respectively in the British and the American English for the word center. But and in the same way, for example, color, C-O-L-O-U-R or color, C-O-L-O-R, these kind of differences that exist in both the varieties, the major varieties, I would say, of English language, they have existed through the times. But what has become interesting from the sociolinguistic point of view today is that, globally the users of English language, not only they have increased in number, but also their interactivity has increased through these social media networks. So when, they interact with people from different, from different regions and from different areas with different varieties of English, including the Australian variety and the New Zealand variety of English and the Canadian variety, and for that matter, Indian or Pakistani varieties of English, the result is that, different models of spellings are being used, and in different varieties, they are standardized in different ways. Now, through these global virtual interactions, because multiple varieties come in when the interaction takes place, so people do not care much about which particular spelling is used. This raises a very interesting question for us as sociolinguists, and that is whether these practices of spellings are good or bad, the current practices that we notice on social media. Whether they are considered to be good or they are considered to be bad, well, this is very difficult to answer, but one answer can be given with surety, and that is they are becoming socially acceptable. They're not only becoming socially acceptable, but, a lot of times they are encouraged as well, and especially amongst the global youth, I would say, the acceptability is very rapidly increasing. If we take examples of social media, for example, Twitter, so until very recently, it only gave 140 letters, space to write a message. So in all these situations, the creators of the messages, all they need to do is to be, to put the message across to the other person or to the other persons within the limit of the words that is given. And in that situation, abbreviated forms would be used, acronyms would be used, spellings would be squeezed, and, different contracted forms are used very conveniently, and nobody bothers about them. In all this context, when, all this is happening, if we relate it to the history of, for example, of English language and the development of English language through the times, it is a very interesting fact that when we look at the development of English from the Old English times to the Middle English times to the early modern English times to the current times, during all these stages, spellings, that is orthography, has remained one of the areas that has changed the least. It has changed very little over the times. Like syntax, it has changed very little. Major changes came in pronunciation, and major changes, especially came in terms of the addition of new vocabulary items, or lending new meanings to the existing words. So in this context, this change that is taking place now in terms of spellings, this is very, very unique. And for that matter, we do not find any example in the history as such of this huge change that is taking place now. Now, what is happening as an impact of this social media and the use of unusual spellings is that people are bringing in these habits to their daily lives as well. So, as academics, we can notice, teachers often complain that students write the same, abbreviated or contracted or shortened spellings or incorrect spellings in their assignments and in their quizzes and in their papers. And, they do not, differentiate between the informal use of this virtual community of internet and the use of language on that virtual community of internet and the use of language in formal academic situations. So, the issues related to spelling and the issues related to the standardized spellings, they are being challenged in so many ways. Use of shorthand has become a part of our lives in so many ways, and especially in the young generation, this is considered to be not only acceptable, but also you would notice, in terms of age as a variable, where the elder people in the society generally criticize younger people for using these kinds of spellings. So this raises a few questions. This puts a huge question mark to what is going to be the future of the spellings. Well, one positive aspect of this change is that this change is something that is going to go on. There is this change in the spellings and this change in the grammar on the social media cannot be stopped. Social media is going to increase with the passage of time. So in that case, what needs to be taken care of is to think about how and in what ways, these changing practices of orthography, that is of using spellings, can be, should they be checked or not in the first place? If they are to be checked, in what ways they can be checked, and how are they going to affect the language use in the society in the coming times? This is one significant question for us to ponder over.